No mother to feed it. Some things just aren't meant to live. You cannot stay here. It is not decent, and Redemption Creek is a decent town. Ruth Bellamy, we have heard a thing we can scarcely credit.
This woman saved my daughter's life while the lot of you were deciding whether it was decent. Now I'll make it proper, right here, in front of all of you.
I stopped thinking about how it looks because a child was dying, and how it looks doesn't feed anybody.
They tell me the baby will be dead by morning, and they say it like it's already settled. Ruth heard the words through the wall of the mercantile, spoken low between two women who did not know she was standing on the other side of the flour barrels. A newborn out at the Vance place, the mother gone in the birthing, the child too weak to take milk, too weak to cry now, only to breathe in that thin way that means the breathing is nearly done. Poor mite, one of them said, no mother to feed it, and that man too proud to beg. Some things aren't meant to live, said the other. Ruth stood very still. Her own arms remembered a weight they no longer held, and something in her, something that had been dead since spring, stirred and lifted its head. Ruth Bellamy was 23, and the town of Redemption Creek had already decided what she was. She was the widow out past the creek bend, the one who'd buried her husband in October, and her son a week before him, both taken by the same fever, one after the other, so fast she'd barely had time to wash the one before she was washing the other. She was the woman who'd come to church that first Sunday after, and heard the pews go quiet, and had understood, from the way the quiet held, that grief was allowed here but only if it was tidy, only if it did not sit too large in the room. And Ruth was large. She knew what they said. She had heard it her whole life, in one shape or another. That a woman built broad and soft was a woman who'd let herself go, who couldn't be helped, who a man might pity but would never choose. She had heard it from her own mother. She had heard it, once, without meaning to, from her husband, in the low talk of men on a porch, and she had gone on loving him anyway, because that was what you did. So she kept her head down. She took in mending. She counted her coins twice, and put the second one back. And when the mercantile women spoke of the dying Vance baby as if it were weather, Ruth put down the thread she'd come to buy, and she walked out into the cold without buying it. The wind off the pass was sharp enough to cut. Snow lay in the ruts of the road, gray and packed hard, and the sky hung low and iron-colored over the whole valley. It was a full 3 miles to the Vance ranch. Ruth had no wagon. She had 2 feet and a shawl, and a thing inside her chest she could not have named if you'd asked. She walked. The Vance place sat at the end of a long rutted track, a good house gone quiet, smoke rising thin from one chimney and none from the others. As Ruth came up the rise, she saw men at the barn, 3 of them, hard-faced, loading their gear onto horses. Ranch hands. They did not look like men reporting for work. They looked like men leaving it. One of them spotted her and spat into the snow. "Nothing here for you, missus. Man's not paying wages this month. Not paying anything. We're done." "You're leaving him," Ruth said. "With a newborn in the house." The man swung up into his saddle. "Baby's not going to make it to need us. And a place with no woman and no money isn't a place a man stays." He touched his hat, mockingly. "You want the misery, it's all yours." They rode past her down the track, and one of them laughed, and the laugh was the same laugh Ruth had heard her whole life, the one that meant, "Look at her. What does she think she's doing?" She let it go by.
Since
She had grown a thick skin over a soft heart, and the skin held. The porch steps creaked under her. She knocked, and when no one answered, she pushed the door, and it gave. The house was cold. That was the first thing. A house with a baby in it should have been warm, and this one had let its fires die. And the second thing was the smell of a place where death had already come once, and was waiting, patient, for the second helping it had been promised. A man sat at the kitchen table with his back to her, big through the shoulders, dark hair. his head bowed over something he held in the crook of his arm. He did not turn. "I told them to go," he said. His voice scraped down to nothing. "I've got no wages this month. Told them all to go." "I'm not a hand," Ruth said. Now he turned. Thomas Vance had a face made for weather and grief both. A hard, handsome face that had not slept in days, dark stubble and darker circles, eyes that had cried themselves past crying, and in his arm, wrapped in a blanket that had been meant for a christening and not for this, lay the smallest, stillest baby Ruth had ever seen. "Then what are you?" he said. Not unkind, just emptied. "My name is Ruth Bellamy. I heard your wife passed. I heard the child won't take milk." She stepped closer, and she did not ask permission, because there was no time in the room for permission. "May I see her?" He looked at her a long moment. And then, because a drowning man does not question the hand that reaches, he held the baby out. Ruth took the small weight, and her whole body remembered. The child was a girl, tiny, her lips gone pale, her breath a thread, cold to the touch where a baby should be furnace warm. And Ruth, who had buried her own son not 2 months gone, who had lain awake every night since with her arms aching around nothing, felt the ache turn, all at once, into something with a use. "What's her name?" Ruth said. "Grace." The man's voice broke on it. "Eliza wanted Grace." "Grace," Ruth said it soft to the baby, the way you'd coax a shy thing out of a corner. "Grace, now, not yet. You're not going yet." She sat down in the rocker by the cold hearth. She did not think about the man in the room, or what a body was or wasn't allowed to do, or what Redemption Creek would say. She had milk still. Her body, cruel all these weeks, keeping ready for a son who was in the ground. Her body had one last thing it knew how to do. She turned toward the wall, and she settled the baby close, and she waited. For a long moment, nothing. The baby too weak even to try. "Come on," Ruth breathed. "Come on, little one. I've got you. I've got you now." And then, the smallest thing, a flutter, a working of the tiny jaw, a pull, weak, then less weak, then steady, and the room, which had been holding its breath, let it go, all at once. Grace was eating. Thomas Vance made a sound Ruth would never forget, a raw, broken sound that a strong man makes only once in his life, and he put his face in his 2 big hands, and his shoulders shook, and Ruth looked away to give him what privacy the cold room could offer, and she rocked, and she fed his daughter, and outside the snow began again in the falling dark. She stayed the night. There was never any question of it. A baby that week needed feeding every hour or 2, and Ruth was not going to walk 3 miles home and leave that thread of breath to fend for itself. Thomas built up the fires. She heard him moving through the house, chopping wood in the black cold, and slowly the rooms took on some warmth. Toward morning, Grace slept, truly slept. Her color come up rosy, her small fist curled against Ruth's chest, and Ruth herself dozed in the rocker and woke to gray light and the smell of coffee. Thomas set a cup beside her without a word. He'd made it strong and black. He stood by the window with his own cup and watched the snow. "She was gone," he said finally. "I'd made my peace with it. God help me. I'd already dug." He stopped. "The doc said there was nothing to do. Said some just aren't strong enough for this world. And I sat there 3 days, watching my daughter starve in my arms, because I had nothing to give her." He turned. "And you walked in out of a snowstorm. A woman I never met. I heard she wouldn't eat," Ruth said simply. "I had something she needed. That's all it is." But it was not all it was, and they both knew it, and neither of them said the rest. She should have gone home that morning. She stayed instead, because Grace was not out of the woods, and one good feeding did not make a well child. She stayed the next day too, and the next. She cooked for the man because he had not eaten either, threw out the spoiled things in his larder, and made do with what was left. Filled the house with the smell of biscuit and beans, until it stopped smelling like a place where someone had died. She washed the christening blanket and hung it to dry. She sang, low, the alto lines of hymns she'd learned as a girl, because babies do better with a voice in the room. Thomas worked the ranch alone now, all 3 hands gone. She'd watch him from the window, breaking ice on the troughs, hauling feed to the cattle in the killing cold, and she'd see how the work was too much for one man, and she'd say nothing, because it was not her place. At night, he sat across the table from her while she tended his daughter, and they did not talk much, but the quiet between them was not the church quiet, the quiet that judged. It was the other kind, the kind that rests. It was the 4th day that the town came. Ruth heard the wagons before she saw them, and she knew, the way you know weather, what they were. 3 of the ranch hands had gone back to Redemption Creek with a story to tell, and the story had grown teeth in the telling. A widow woman, alone in a widower's house, days and nights, and the particular thing she was doing there, which decent people did not speak of, and therefore spoke of endlessly. Mrs. Delphine Marsh led them. She ran the Ladies' Aid, and she came up the track in her good bonnet, with 3 other women behind her, and her chin set like a fence post. Ruth met them on the porch with Grace asleep against her shoulder. She did not go down the steps to them. She stayed up where she was, and it put her above them, and she had not meant it as anything, but she saw that Mrs. Marsh did not like it. "Ruth Bellamy," Mrs. Marsh said, "we have heard a thing we can scarcely credit." "Then don't credit it," Ruth said. "Believe what you can see. There's a baby alive in this house that the doctor gave up for dead. She's alive because I'm feeding her. That's the whole of it. The whole of it." Mrs. Marsh's eyes went over her. The broad, soft shape of her. The way those eyes always did. A woman living unwed under a man's roof. Sleeping in his house. And you a widow. Not 2 months in your black. Have you no shame at all? Have you no thought for how it looks? "I've thought about how it looks," Ruth said. "I thought about it the whole 3 miles I walked in the snow to get here. And then I stopped thinking about how it looks. Because a child was dying, and how it looks doesn't feed anybody." One of the women behind Mrs. Marsh made a small sound, and it might have been agreement, and Mrs. Marsh silenced it with a glance. "You cannot stay here," Mrs. Marsh said. "It is not decent, and Redemption Creek is a decent town. We will find a proper wet nurse from a Christian family, and you will go back to where you belong." "Where's the wet nurse been these 4 days then?" Ruth asked. Where were the Christian families when 3 hands were riding off and leaving a baby to starve? I didn't see the Ladies' Aid on this road until there was a scandal in it worth the drive. Mrs. Marsh's face went white and then red. "You insolent. That's enough." Thomas Vance came around the side of the house with an axe still in his hand from the woodpile, and he did not raise his voice, but the yard went quiet all the same. He came and stood on the bottom step between the women and Ruth, and he looked up at Ruth with the baby, and then he looked at the town. "This woman," he said, "saved my daughter's life. While the lot of you were deciding whether it was decent." He let that sit. "You want to talk about what's proper. Then I'll make it proper. Right now, in front of all of you, so there's no more talk." He set the axe against the rail. He climbed 1 step, so he stood just below her, and he took off his hat, and to Ruth's astonishment, the hard-weathered man looked all at once unsure, like a boy. "Ruth Bellamy," he said, low, but not so low the town couldn't hear. "I've got no wages this month, and a ranch that's near too much for one man, and a daughter who needs you more than she needs air. It's not a fine offer. It's the plainest offer a man ever made. But if you'll marry me, you'll never be spoken to like this on my land again. Marry me, and be done with them." The yard held its breath. And Ruth understood what he was doing. He was rescuing her. He was giving her his name like a coat thrown over a woman in the cold, to make her respectable, to shut Mrs. Marsh's mouth. It was a kindness. It was the kind of marriage the frontier was full of. Arrangement, convenience, 2 needs meeting in the snow. She could have said yes to that. It would have been enough. It would have saved her. But Ruth had been chosen for her use before. She'd been the strong back, the willing hands, the woman a man settled for and a town tolerated. She had spent 23 years being enough for the purpose and never once being wanted. And that thing in her, the thing that had lifted its head in the mercantile, came now the whole way up and stood. "No," Ruth said. The word went through the yard like a dropped plate. Mrs. Marsh's chin came up in triumph. No, Ruth said again, gentler. Only to Thomas now. Only to the man on the step below her, with his hat in his hands. Not like that. I've been married to save somebody trouble. I've been the practical choice. I'll not be it again. Not even for Grace. Not even to spite these women, much as I'd like to. Her voice shook, and she let it. If you're asking me because it's tidy, Thomas Vance, then the answer's no. I'd rather they talk. I'd rather walk home in the snow. He stared at her, and then something moved across his ruined face. Something breaking open, and he set his hat down on the step, and he took her free hand in both of his, the one not holding his sleeping daughter, and he held it like it was the last warm thing in the valley. 4 days ago I wanted to die, he said, and he did not care now who heard it. I had a daughter I couldn't save and a wife in the ground, and I wanted to lie down in the snow and be done, and you walked in, and last night I sat across that table from you while you sang to my girl, and I thought, God forgive me, that I hadn't felt like a living man since spring, and I did just then. His voice cracked. I'm not asking you to be practical, Ruth. I've been practical my whole life, and it didn't keep the cold out. I'm asking because when you're in my house, I don't want to be anywhere else on this earth. I'm asking for you, not the help you are. You. Do you hear the difference? Ruth's eyes filled and spilled, and she did not wipe them. I hear it, she whispered. Then hear this. I don't care how it looks. I don't care what she thinks. He tipped his head at Mrs. Marsh, without looking away from Ruth. You walked 3 miles in a blizzard for a stranger's child. A man doesn't settle for a woman like that. A man gets down and thanks God she came up his road. And he did. He got down, right there in the snow on the bottom step, and he looked up at her, big and broken and unashamed. Marry me because I love you. That's the only reason I've got, and it's the only one worth having. Will you? The whole cold world waited. Yes, Ruth said. Oh, get up, you foolish man. You'll freeze. Yes. And the town of Redemption Creek stood in the yard and watched a woman they'd come to shame be chosen. Freely, out loud, on her feet, with a saved baby on her shoulder. And there was nothing in it for them to carry home but that. Mrs. Marsh opened her mouth and found she had nowhere to put her words. The women behind her looked at the man on his knees in the snow, and one of them, the young one who'd made the small sound before, was crying and pretending not to. They married 3 weeks later, in the little church. On a morning the sun came out for the first time in a fortnight, and lay thin and gold over the snow. Grace was baptized the same day in the christening blanket Ruth had washed clean, and she howled through the whole of it, healthy and furious. And the sound of that howl in that quiet church was the finest thing anyone there had heard in a long winter. The town came, because a town will always come to a wedding, and some of them came ashamed, and some came curious, and a few, the ones worth knowing, came glad. Mrs. Marsh sent a dried apple pie, and did not stay to see it eaten, which everyone understood to be as near an apology as she had in her. Ruth cut it into slices, and gave the first to the young woman who'd cried in the yard, and neither of them said anything, and both of them understood. The ranch was still too much for two, that first hard winter, and there were nights Ruth lay awake doing sums in her head that would not come right no matter how she turned them. But 2 is not 1. She learned the feel of the work, the ice on the troughs at dawn, the count of the herd, the weight of a bucket carried against the wind. She learned which of the cattle would gentle, and which would not, and the trick of a rope in cold hands, and how to read the sky over the pass for what it meant to bring. She sold her mending money into a milk cow, and named her nothing, and loved her anyway. There were mornings the 2 of them worked in the dark and did not speak, because speaking cost breath, and breath was dear, and there was a companionship in that silence that Ruth had not known a body could have with another. Thomas took on one hand come spring, a young fellow glad of the wage, and the ranch began, slowly, the way everything on the frontier came slow, to right itself. The thaw brought mud, and then it brought green, and the green came up out of the killing ground, like it had only been waiting, the way things do. Thomas learned the sound of his wife singing in his kitchen, and learned that a man could be tired to the bone and still be glad to come in from the cold, and learned, too, that he laughed now, sometimes, out loud, which had surprised him the first time, as if it belonged to some other man, And Grace grew fat and loud and rosy. A fighter, they said in town now. Always was. That Vance baby. And no one said a word anymore about how she'd come to be alive, because the truth of it had gone soft and kind in the telling, the way a town will finally let a good thing be good. In the evenings, the three of them sat by a fire that no longer went out, Grace asleep between them, and sometimes Thomas would look at his wife across the room, and Ruth would catch him at it, and neither would say anything, because the quiet between them had long stopped needing to be filled. Once, near the end of that first winter, he reached over and took her hand in the firelight, and only held it, and she let him, and that was the whole of what passed between them, and it was everything. She had come to that house a broken woman, arms empty, told all her life she was too much, and somehow never enough. He had been a broken man, hollowed out by loss, ready to lie down in the snow, and what neither could do alone, they had done together, without ever quite deciding to. They had made each other whole, not fixed. You don't get fixed, not from what they'd both lost. But whole is a different thing than unbroken. Whole is two halves that fit, cracks and all, and hold. That is the thing this cold country teaches, if it teaches anything. That worth is not a thing the town hands you, nor a thing a mirror shows you. It is the walk you'll take in the snow for a stranger. It is who reaches for your hand when the yard goes quiet. Ruth Bellamy had been overlooked her whole life by people who never once looked properly, and it took a dying child and a grieving man and a bitter winter to show her what she'd been all along.